So, welcome to the Deep Dive into Death, Episode 7 Grief is Vital to Your Existence. And I'm your host, Malia Bayich. I'm a certified death doula, Reiki Master teacher, and a massage therapist. And you can find me at my website at findingrealm.com or on X, YouTube, and Rumble, just in case I ever get cut off. And the purpose for me helping people through this is through death education, grief support, death planning, advanced care planning, legacy and ritual, ceremonies, and vigil. You can hire me in person or virtually. And recently, I'm just starting the first Tuesday of every month, starting on April 1st from 1:30 to 3 at the Vancouver Island Regional Library in Qualicum Beach, our first open Death Cafe. Well, Death Cafes have been around for a while. It's a structured conversation where people gather together to discuss death, exploring our relationship with death, dying, and grief in a safe, non judgmental space. And death cafes have a significant impact on both how we live life and how we die. Personally, I find them quite empowering, and you often leave feeling in a really good mood because as we're discussing death, it actually helps you live a better life. So, I'm running the Death Cafe through Home Hospice Association, which is a registered charity that I work for, with a focus on dignity, compassion, and culturally sensitive human connection. Home Hospice Association empowers communities to help people die wherever they call home. And so they do a lot of death education, whereas that's where I've got most of my training from. But we'll get more into Home Hospice Association in a later show. So, for this show, grief is vital to your existence. So, grief is a mirror of the true self. So, why does the darkest time sometimes feel like the truest? Grief reveals who we are at our raw, stripping away pretense and showing our capacity for love, loss, and authenticity. What I recognize when I am experiencing grief, because I've experienced a shitload of grief, and when I have seen people in their experiences with grief. So for me, I've been doing grief support in my massage studio for 14 and a half years. Normally, in that period, it wasn't so much about death, except for the last couple years, but trauma and grief held in our bodies. Um, and when people are grieving, it shows you who you actually are or who they actually are. Sometimes when people are in grief, they can become more compassionate and loving. Other times in their grief, they can become very angry and vengeful. When we're in those times, it allows us to see who people's true potentials are and which direction they're going to choose to go as a human. So, death phobia in a Western culture. What are we so afraid of that we won't even talk about it? So, our avoidance of death leaves so much undone, unspoken wishes, unresolved pain, and a missed chance to shape our exit. So, let's think about this one for a moment. And we'll get into this in a few more slides too, but when we are missing how to shape our exit because we're so caught up in so many other things, the opportunity of returning to the universe is missed and perhaps might stick you back in the cyclic cycle of your own karma, somebody else's karma. So, death is the greatest mystery and ritualistic ceremony. So, what if we treated death like a sacred act we could design? Death isn't just an end, it's a potent personal ceremony or ritual that we can plan. It's the ultimate surrender to the life's biggest unknown. And so many people dread death, but when we look at some of these ancient cultures like the Egyptians or the Tibetans, they prepare for their death their whole lives. They know that entering back into the infinite possibility, that's how I'll call it, you know, is possibly the greatest moment ever of our 3D lives. But when we institutionalize it so much and get wrapped up in so many other emotions, we could be missing the boat. I feel like the energies on earth at this time are giving people the opportunity to get off this samsara wheel. But it's a personal choice. And this is where making and thinking and choosing how you're going to live well and die wise plays a significant role of perhaps where you're getting placed in your afterlife. You know, I the universe doesn't care whether you have a good experience or a bad experience. It cares, did you have the experience? And how many times you want to learn that becomes your own choice. So if you want to learn it in one lifetime, awesome. If you want to learn it in 100,000 lifetimes, awesome. It doesn't care. Or that's my own thought. The universe does not care about how many times you want to learn it. So it's your choice to decide how many times do you want to learn the lesson. So karma, entanglement, and letting go. Are you carrying something that's not yours into the next life? So holding on to others' weight tangles us up across lives or energies. Releasing it lightens our load. So this is kind of an interesting one, and this is all going to go on your belief system. But if we are talking about quantum entanglement here, and I just want to put this into your food for thought, because this is how we actually also shift the lens of how we're grieving, is perhaps holding on to our griefs in certain ways. It's important to grieve, and we'll get into that too. But if you have the opportunity to maybe perhaps get off of this cyclic cycle and in back to the infinite possibility realm, I'll call it. Um, Perhaps holding on to certain things or carrying it for somebody else might give you another 400 lives, so that quantum entanglement is really important, which leads us into this. It's not my weight to carry. What happens when you stop carrying everyone else's mess? Letting go of others' emotional baggage is the key to living lightly. Hand back the accountability to the right owner. It's not my weight to carry. This has been my mantra for the last couple years, and definitely been sharing this one with a lot of my clients. And it brings this aha moment. Because often in grief, when we're dealing with all the drama, trauma, what's happening at the end of the life, X, Y, and Z, we start carrying other people's shit. They want us, well, she did this to me, and then so you gotta X, you know where I'm getting at here. So saying, that's not my weight to carry. That's yours. You have it back. It's so powerful. Like, I've got to tell you, this has been the one where I've seen the greatest shifts for a lot of people. It's not my weight to carry. So whose weight? What happens when you stop carrying everyone else's mess? The alchemy of grief. So this is going to be a whole other show, but I wanted to just put this in. So can the dark night of the soul be where the light breaks in? So grief can transform us, turn pain into magic. Grief, or sorry, gifts and insights if we let it. Or it can take us to the deepest depths of hell. So I've watched people go in both directions on this one, where grief can transform us. It actually can. It, can become your greatest lesson and tool in life on how you want to live and love. Or it can just make you the most miserable person that nobody wants to be around because you can't figure out your shit. Sorry, I'm a very blunt person. So the unhealed wounds at death's door, what's not healed comes back. Family stuff, grudges, unmet love, settling childish scores. Death amplifies it all. So why do we save the biggest fights to the end? When you die or are dying, your person, it's said, and I see it, so I could agree with it, that death amplifies who we are. So if you're a more kinder, peaceful person, that often will amplify. If you're an angry, miserable human being, that will often amplify. So I want you to consider, and I mean, this is no judgment or anything, but just, from witnessing this many times, why do we save our biggest fights to the end? If these are the people that we say that we love, why do we let our shit, our weight, all that stuff, do we hand that over to the dying person? And vice versa. When we talk about clearing the karma and the quantum entanglement, and handing back the weight to other people. What's yours? What's mine? Which ones are we carrying? You know, this can allow us to have so much healing if we understood this. But one of the biggest things that I see and hear is the fighting at the end, right? So you're setting yourself up for probably another go around if this is how you're exiting, or letting a loved one, allowing them to exit with that. That's heavy. That's really, really heavy. You know. So we're fractals of Mother Earth. What if every loss is a part of Mother Earth's story? So we're each a piece of her, experiencing life so she can too. Death's a return to a way bigger picture. So if we think of this fractal thing, I don't know if you guys know who a guy named Matthias De Stefano is. So I'm sort of taking what he's saying, paraphrasing it big time. So I'm not going to do justice to how he said it, but it stuck in my mind for many, many years. And so if Mother Earth is our mother and we are her children, she is asking us right now to go back to your room and clean up your own mess. Don't worry about other people. Don't worry about what's happening over there or way on the other side of the world or something that came up in the news. Go back and clean up your own mess. Go back to these unhealed wounds so that when it comes to your death time, it doesn't become the biggest fight at the end. It's not actually rocket science. It's very simple. It's just most people don't want to do the work. Most people don't want to talk about death, don't want to prepare for their death, or do the work of any of their healing within their own lifetime. Another thing that I like to bring up sometimes, and some, because I like to change the paradigm, the way of thinking, so that there's a possibility of shift. Um, And I guess I'll share the story like this. One time, I was trying to figure something out. So I decided that every person that came on my table, I had killed them in a lifetime before. So in this lifetime, I was setting myself up for correcting any karma. And not to say that that's true or however that goes, but I just wanted to change the perception of my own thinking over a certain situation. It actually changed the way I started working on bodies, on like people's bodies, right? And I had such an interesting, profound shift that I was like, well, this is actually kind of interesting. So I started sharing that with some of my clients when they would be so mad at, I'll just say, when Jenny's mad at Sally kind of deal, and say, well, what if you agreed to something with Sally in a lifetime before and you guys are actually really good friends on the other side? And we know this when we're looking at a lot of hypnotherapy sessions or near death experience people that share these stories of life being a bit of a school, right? And that somebody has to volunteer to be the bad guy for the experience so it can get played out. So, in that angle, it creates a different way to see ourselves as a fractal version of something a lot bigger, having the experience of the experience. Might have went a little off track on that slide, but you get where I'm going with this, I think. So, this is a big one. Beliefs don't matter in the end. I know. What if the beliefs we fight for get in the way? So, m- one of my mother in law's last words were, "Everything I ever thought, none of it matters now." When the veil's thinning, our 3D existence no longer is bound by the laws of that dimension. So when we're in this life experience, there are certain beliefs that absolutely carry you through. So I'm not saying that every one of your beliefs doesn't matter. Um, but what I am saying is sometimes the ones that hold us too rigid or that we get too much polarity from really at the end don't matter the same way. Like, why were people fighting? We could look at these last couple years or right now, tons of things that are happening globally, and you know this way, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative. But I can guarantee you, when you're at the end of your life, you're not going to be like, oh, I wish I fought for this political version more, or it's those types of beliefs. And when we go back to the whole why do we fight at the ends, those beliefs are what have locked us into so much turmoil, trauma, and drama throughout our lifetime's existence. So what if the beliefs we fight for get in the way? So the infinite wonder of death. What if death isn't the end, but the start of something we can't even imagine? Death opens into infinite possibilities. God, source, energy, universe, holograms, simulations, whatever. It gets beyond the wildest levels of your own imagination. The wonder can only grow. And as much as it is to, you know, have that belief that we had, but if the universe is infinite, the possibilities are limitless. That, how do I want to say this? This would be a very human way to say this, but you don't want to possibly consider being held back from an even higher level of awesome potential because of something else. It's it gets wilder and wilder. The more I actually dissolve some of the belief systems that I've had and I'm open to other ones, I think, oh, isn't that fascinating how it all fits in together, actually, even more. So, the infinite wonder of death. Eastern cultures are way more comfortable with this, but in our Western culture, we're not quite so much, right? So, what if there could just be something even larger than our wildest dreams? Those who truly know and love have journeyed through grief. They've felt the weight of loss, remorse, guilt, and have transformed these into the most potential force, love. They offer love freely, knowing that one day too they will face a loss and transition. With mindfulness of karma, they release judgment from an act, a place of deep compassion, trusting that each choice made in this moment serves the highest good, requiring the full essence of their being to honor what is true and just. If you can understand your grief, you have the potential to transform it to epic levels. Oh, my dog's there. Hold on one second, or she'll just keep scratching at the door. She likes to be in here. You have the possibility to transform it into epic levels. When I see people who have experienced loss, and more than one loss, but like multiple losses, and I might be judgmental when I say this, but I often find that they are the ones that show up the most when you are having that experience yourself. Versus when people haven't quite had that loss yet, or one or two, and it's defined in such a different way. And that shows by how somebody's learned how to transform their grief. Did they transform it in a good way, or did they go to the deepest, darkest depths of their own hell? Right? This is it's the yin and the yang. It can go in either direction. So when we go back to that part about karma too, I guess I should have mentioned it then, but it's just all kind of coming. To me, other people might think of this differently, but for me, karma is about balance. It's about coming back into balance. Not so much good and bad, a little bit, but once again, the universe doesn't really care if something is good or bad. It cares, well, did you have the experience? What did you learn? We're kind of bound by the laws of balance and like polar opposites in this dimension. So that's how a lot of the experiences will be shaped. So if you're too much on this side, the universe will pull in experiences to help balance it out on this side. And depending if you believe in multiple lifetimes or all that jazz, that gets put into play as well. So you have the potential to transform your grief. The biggest thing I know is you can't run from it. You can't hide from it. In fact, it actually gets worse. It's going through it. It's when you're in it, finding those moments where you can create, like for me, it would be a little ceremony or ritual, like candles, smell, makes that moment when you're in that depth beautiful. Bring in beauty, bring in whatever could be magical for you. And I guarantee you, the universe will speak to you in the wildest ways that you could never imagine. Some of my biggest magical moments have been when I have been in the deepest, darkest moments of my own grief. And then I thought after, like, holy fuck, did that just happen? Right? So I encourage you to actually use it. Grief is vital, it's a tool. It will show you how much you can love. It really does. Because we forget about love a lot of times and we just assume that it's always going to be there when it's not. And it will always be there. So I don't quite mean it that way. But when somebody dies and then they're no longer within your existence and you wish that you had the ability to love them, but you were so busy doing something else, you know, my dad always says the smallest deed outweighs the greatest intention. It doesn't matter how many times you tell a person that you love them, it's the little things that you do to show that you care. And on that note, you can find me at findingrealm.com. Finally got my website fixed and all that stuff, so go check it out. There's still a few things I've got to add, and I'm working on a few other projects and stuff that I don't want to talk about just yet because I don't want to wreck my own manifestation abilities because they're pretty awesome. But I look forward to sharing that with you guys too. And I think that's it. Yeah, other than that, grief is vital to your existence. So explore it.